So good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Board of Selectmen's February 5th meeting. This meeting is being conducted remotely using the Zoom webinar technology. What that means is if you would like to participate in citizens' comments, you will see a little hand at the bottom of your screen. If you press on that, raise your hand. We will know that you want to make some comments and we will give you permission to speak. So before we begin, I am going to take a roll call vote of the Board of Selectmen this evening. Robin Hunter, present.
Dave Haviland, present.
Hudson, present.
And I'm technologically challenged this evening. I do not see any citizens' comments, but I would like somebody else to confirm that.
Well, Judy's speaking next, so she's the only person on that is a citizen. So you can let her in for both.
Oh, okay.
Judy's coming in.
All right. All right. Well,
So are you ready for me?
yep, we don't see you, and I don't know if that's by design.
I don't know. I have had this issue before for some
Okay.
reason. But I can share my screen.
Okay. So, Judy, why don't you introduce yourself? And I will quickly just say that the segment is Judy Schultz, who is the chair of the Cultural Council, is going to provide us with an update of the Cultural Council's activities and events. And I just want to give you a shout out, Judy. I thought the exhibit over the summer, the Amelia Peabody exhibit, was just phenomenal.
Thank you.
I went more than once, and what an incredible woman. So just thank you to you and everybody else who made us remember, all that she did for Dover. Just incredible. So thank you.
No, it's a story that needs to be told and people need to be reminded because pretty much we all moved here because of some way she influenced the town, whether it's green space, whether it's open space, environmental farms, different things like that we are also very thankful for. So I'm still trying to share my screen. Can somebody allow me to do that? Oh, there we go.
Yep.
There we go. And let's see, share. And I need to go.
There we go. Perfect. We don't see you, but we see your screen.
I know, but where's my little icon here? Here we go. Where's my little icon?
See at the bottom, if you want to do a slideshow, if you go to the bottom and there's a little like square, it looks like a projector actually.
I'm not seeing. Oh, wait a minute. It's at the top. It was covered. I found it.
Okay.
All right.
It's in both
We are
spots.
good.
Okay. Excellent.
Does everybody see this? Because I can't.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Indeed.
Excellent. So Dover Cultural Council is part of the Massachusetts Cultural Council. We are the local cultural council. These are our current members. Denny O'Clair is our treasurer. Camille Boudreau is a Dover Sherburne High School student. Shashi Chawla, Stevie Leahy, and me. I always like to follow the money. Massachusetts Cultural Council gets about $33 million a year as a budget, and the lion's share of it comes from the state. You can see that there's quite a big chunk of money that comes from gaming. I asked Michael Bobbitt, who was the outgoing president of Mass Cultural Council last year, is there any way to tap into some of the sports betting that's going on? And he said that that's something that has not yet been discussed or enacted, but that would be an additional source of revenue for arts in Massachusetts. And even though we are known as Title Town and all, arts in Massachusetts is a far greater economic engine than any in all sports combined. So things like Handel and Haydn Society, all the different theaters, all the different museums are really important to the people of Massachusetts and really important to the people who come and visit Massachusetts. This is our booth at Dover Days. This is when we get to do our outreach because otherwise we're pretty much anonymous, but we have surveys and stickers and we ask people about what they would like in their community in terms of arts enrichment. These are the grants that we gave in 2024 for the year 2025. I have some pictures as I scroll down, but we gave money for musicians for the Hanukkah party. We gave Project Sarang, which was wonderful performance of South Asian music. We did Chickering Elementary School, If You Plant a Seed, which is a children's picture book. And with that book, many copies were purchased and it was read to preschools and the Council on Aging and all the different classrooms at Chickering. And the whole concept behind it is if you plant a carrot, you get a carrot. If you plant a cabbage seed, you get a cabbage. But what if you plant a seed of kindness? And it's all about finding acts of kindness in your daily life. So everyone who participated in a reading got a packet of pea seeds to go home and plant in their own gardens or in a pot. We also gave $1,000 to Park and Rec for their first Friday's community arts workshops. That was every first Friday of the month, except for July and September, for a free arts and crafts project to be done. We gave $500 to Ball in the House, which is a wonderful a cappella group that has opened for everyone from Lionel Richie and the Beach Boys to the Jonas Brothers, who came and worked with high school students on musical composition. We gave over $2,000 to Erin Gordon for a Community Voices initiative. This unfortunately didn't happen because of various issues. Unfortunately, Erin lost both of her parents in a very short time period, but it was to interview veterans in town and to record their experiences of being in war or being a veteran and serving their country. And finally, we gave money to the Dover Music Festival, which I think is now its 8th year. When we do our outreach, there's a survey that we hand out to people. And by and large, the community is most interested in community-wide events, things that are multi-generational and open to everyone in the community. So we've been very much trying to give money to these larger projects and larger ways for the community to gather. Here's a picture from the Hanukkah party. This is from the Hometown Weekly with a nice typo in there. I think it's soothing South Indian sounds, but a picture and article that Audrey Anderson did about this performance. Here's an article from Hometown Weekly about planting the seed. So we tend to get nice coverage in Hometown Weekly for these types of programs. Here's the a cappella group that worked with the high school. And then a picture of the Dover Music Festival. So we have just now finished our grant process, and thank you to you all for accepting the money at your last meeting. These are the next grants and the next things that we have to look forward to in Dover in 2026. Project Sarang is returning, this time with more of a focus on India, Nepalese, Bangladesh, and Pakistani dance and music. The Dover Historical Society is going to have a daffodil day to celebrate spring and to plant daffodils in the Salween Triangle and have activities for kids and anyone who's a master gardener, an amateur gardener, a wannabe gardener to enjoy spring and flowers and the Dover Historical Society. We typically give money to Dover Foundation Productions. We don't do it every year, but this year we are supporting Fiddler on the Roof. Grace Fang is a high school student in Dover, and she came up with this idea of having a musical performance. She's part of the Boston Youth Symphony Orchestra and the Boston Conservatory. And she has traveled the world performing, and she has been really struck by how music connects people, whether you speak the same language or whether you are from the same culture. Music is this wonderful way to connect. So with a professor at Berkeley, she hopes to, or she's got the money now to bring the Berkeley Global Strings, as well as some of her high school performers, to perform in Dover using Eastern and Western music. So that's very exciting. This is the first time we've had a high school student take on a project like this. In the past, we've had a high school student who did the trick or trunk, decorating vehicles and having them with this part with Park and Rec for Halloween. But this is a big musical production being taken on by a high school student, so that's quite exciting. And then we have the Dover Diwali celebration, which we have sponsored in the past, but now with the community center, there's a larger venue for a larger celebration of light. And then again, we're giving money to the music festival. What I would note here is that the trend that we've seen is that we're looking at larger grants to larger festivals, more participants than, say, a $300 grant to the Dover Library for summer reading kickoff or something like that. So that's kind of exciting for us to be able to take on some of these larger events that are going on in Dover. And that's it for me in terms of my presentation. But happy to answer any questions.
Well, I would like to thank you for making this presentation, and I learned something new. So I would like to attend some of these events that you're sponsoring. So where are they, like, for instance, the Sound of Dover, where is that going to be advertised?
I'm going to try working with all of these to get into our town newsletter and things like that. Excellent. Once we nail down the dates, because some of them are, June. They're very vague at this point.
Right.
But as dates become locked in, I'm hoping to put that into the town newsletter for addition. And then it's on the individual, either organization or individual, to promote that. Okay. So they should be using social media and Hometown Weekly, Stroll, whatever they have accessible to help promote what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful collection of events. I was thinking to myself, with the Dover Daffodil Days, I wonder when they'll be able to actually do that. With all the snow out there, I think we all want to celebrate spring.
Exactly.
But it's great presentation, Judy, and really, again, thank you for everything you do to the town, for the town. So really appreciate this.
It's fantastic. Judy, are you aware of Suzanne? I believe her name is Hiltz. Do I have that right, Mike? Yep. Suzanne does the newsletter for the town. So if you're letting people know, that's who to contact.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. We put information, Judy, about the grant process. And so, yes, I have. She emails me every month. So.
Yeah, my wife Kate used to be on the cultural council, and one, I'm glad that you guys have a little bit more money than back then. I mean, they would fight over like $1,000 or $2,000 and try and do as
Right.
much as they could with it. But these are all very diverse, well thought out. So kudos to you and your committee.
Thank you. Thank you. We have
Indeed,
fun,
Judy.
and
I'd very
it,
much like to thank you for your presentation. It was quite informative, and I'm certainly going to plan to attend some of these events.
one thing I'll say too is that we are a bit of a pilot in that we have a high school student on our committee, and you all have to vote her on or him on because they are not usually of age. But our previous student Antonio was part of many presentations that Mass Cultural Council did, encouraging other communities to embrace student voices as being a very worthy way to include the community. So thank you.
Indeed.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Well, that made you put a smile on your face.
Yeah.
So we will move on to item 1.2, and I believe the two Kevins are going to be presenting, and that is a presentation by the Engineering Corp regarding the Center Street, Springdale Ave, Walpole Street local bottleneck reduction program. I'm sure everyone on this in this meeting has been caught in that bottleneck.
Robin, just before Kevin's taken over, as you said, if Kevin
Which
one Kevin wasn't enough, we have two just in case. So just a reminder to the board that you had accepted this grant early in 2025. And this was a grant for just over, or the first portion of this grant was just over $200,000 for the redesign and permitting of this intersection. And as we promised at that time, when we had gotten to this point, we would come back before the board for review by you before finalizing the design and moving forward. And also just want to thank our Kevin McCabe. He's on vacation this week, but he's still joining us, so appreciate that.
I don't want to hear it if he's someplace warm.
Then don't ask him.
Yeah, Mike, thanks for the introduction. Kevin DeAndre from TEC has a presentation to kind of walk through the process, but just a little bit more context. I put in a grant in August of 24 for this, and to, like Mike said, we were awarded it in January, and then it was before the board to accept the grant and the donation. But now I will turn it over to Kevin for the presentation.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. And I wanted to start with a thank you. Dover is a relatively new client for us, but we've had the pleasure of working with your staff on several different projects now, between rail trail planning and design, starting the early steps of the Charles River Bridge. And this is an opportunity here with the local bottleneck reduction program where as we work with our clients like you, we work closely with Kevin and Michael and others to look for opportunities. And collectively, we saw this. And I remember meeting Kevin early in the morning on a July day as the application period was open to see what many of you experience on a daily basis, trying to get through this intersection. So this was an opportunity.
Good in July.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we've done counts at different times to see how it fluctuates during a normal year.
Right.
And but this is a great opportunity to use the state's money to try to do good things in Dover.
Right.
So if you'll allow me, I would love to share my screen, just walk through a presentation to give you the highlights of what we've seen and what we recommend. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So as far as the program background, we are one of Mass DOT's consultants that works as part of the local bottleneck reduction program. This is a state grant funded program that looks at reducing delays at municipally owned intersections throughout the state. It's a competitive process, and fortunately, Dover was successful in getting one of those as part of what was their second round. We have been assisting the town. We looked at this application, and some good news is that approximately 4 months ago, DOT alerted me and then went public with the fact that they would always cover the design process, our services here tonight even, and up to $500,000 in construction. But as of 4 months ago, they actually increased that to a full million. So this bodes very well for what comes out of this design process for this intersection, that it hopefully will not cost the town anything other than some small enhancements or what the program requires, like paying for police services. This is something where we start with the planning process. We have some sketches that I'll show you briefly to make sure that we can answer any of your questions, to be able to refine conceptual aspects of the project before going to very detailed design. Kevin McCabe and others had a chance to meet with some of the business abutters to the intersection to make sure that they could entertain any thoughts from them about access, signs, parking, etc., so that we can try to respect those things as best we can in what we propose. We're here this evening really to give you an update, but also to seek your endorsement so that we can go forward with Mass DOT, who is paying for all the services for design, to make sure that we can go forward with some collaboration, but with some uniformity in how to proceed with what we hope to see constructed in the field. This is one where the town stays in control. So this is a grant program. So the DOT pays for our time, but we more or less report to Kevin. And it's been a great process. This is one of 6 communities that we've already done work in. A couple have already been through construction. And as I mentioned earlier, the only thing formally that's part of the grant program is that you would be responsible for the police detail services and coordinating with the abutting property owners if there's a need for a right of entry to get onto their property to do some improvements. You know the intersection, this could be a quick slide, but the intersection of Center Street, Springdale Ave, and Walpole Street, which is right in the heart of your town center. As we got engaged in things that you might see every day, but we wanted to at least acknowledge there are very long traffic backups, or what we call queues, on Center Street. It's highly dependent on the commuter flows, northbound in the morning and southbound in the evening. I personally witnessed it in the morning backing up to Pine Street several times. The left turning vehicles, particularly if you're coming southbound and looking to turn onto Walpole Street, if there's a car parked there, or even if there isn't, a single left turning vehicle can sometimes back up cars behind it. If people are acting responsibly, they can slowly navigate around a left turning vehicle going southbound, but there is a considerable volume of traffic that takes that left. The through lanes, if you're going straight through the intersection between Walpole Street and Springdale Ave, because of the different angles of the streets, those through lanes are not perfectly aligned today. So we'd like to make some minor striping changes to consider better aligning or better guiding traffic through. The traffic signals today are on the side of the road, and throughout my entire career, I've looked to enhance certain intersections, but I've also seen the safety benefits of trying to modify what is called a post-mounted design into something that gives better visibility of signal heads over the lanes. In general, the traffic signals, the brains of it, the detection of it needs to be more traffic responsive. There needs to be some updates in the equipment so that it can better detect when cars are there and balance the green times to where the heavier flows are.
So I did not realize that the traffic signals could do that.
Yes, and these days there's a myriad of different options for how to detect vehicles. The older versions of how we would do it is wire loops in the pavement. But then if you have a trench path that goes through for any utility work or whatever it may be, can compromise those. More recently, we do a lot of what are video detection systems. They're not there for monitoring, tracking
Right.
anything. It's really there for sensing the change in pixels for when there's an approaching car or no cars. The frequency, it can count the vehicles and the approaches. It's very smart technology that can be used to enhance that responsiveness for how it bounces around to the different movements. The pedestrian facilities need an upgrade. So currently the intersection is not compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act or the Architectural Access Board of Massachusetts requirements. So the ADA or AAB, just with the style of the ramps, where they're located, the lack of tactile warning strips, which are for visually impaired persons. So as we look to do this, DOT understands that as we look at the signals, we can't be, you know, blinded to other needs at the intersection. So as we look to do an enhancement, we're required to make some of these other upgrades, which brings the town into better compliance, at least at this intersection, moving forward. And then one other thing that we saw at different times is that there's the crosswalk that goes between the townhouse and the new community center. That is an area between parked cars. Sometimes there are backups that can cross that. And it's only a mere 100 feet away from the highly controlled signalized intersection. So that is one that has some safety challenges today that we'd like to address and bring them to a more appropriate facility at the signal. Just a few photos. The first in the upper left is just showing some of the alignment challenges, east to west. The upper right shows the lack of current ADA and AAB ramp style. The lower left are 4 stalls on Center Street that are crossing the bank that would be part of our recommendation to try to use that pavement in a different way. And the lower right is a small traffic island that houses some of those posts today, but something that we'd like to enhance to make it more accessible for those that are physically challenged and need wheelchair access or other access, but also to better connect it to the redeveloped business property next door so that it improves the ability and compliance for them to get accessibility to those businesses. When I mentioned the high fluctuations of traffic that's primarily commuter driven, I'm sure you've all seen it. We actually did counts on 2 different cases, 2 different dates, because we wanted to make sure that we had a good understanding of seasonal fluctuations, but also to make sure that we didn't miss something on one particular day. We typically these days do all-day counts when we first start. So while school was still in session, and yet after the community center had opened, we counted for a full day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. every single movement, every 15 minutes on June 10th of this year, of 25. But we also did an updated count in early December during the peak hours, so 7 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m., to make sure that we had a good handle on those different commuter flows, northbound, southbound in particular. On the right, you can see what we call turning movement diagram. The numbers without parentheses are the morning, with parentheses are the evening. So you can see, starting at the bottom, 548 vehicles in a 1-hour period that are going straight through the intersection to head up towards, say, I-95. In the upper part, the southbound flows in the evening, in parentheses, you have 703 through vehicles, but you have 229 left turning vehicles. So there's a very significant left turning volume, which also leads to evening congestion as you come south. Some of the recommendations that we're looking to put in place, this is a graphic. We had prepared a traffic memorandum, our team, dated January 7th. that outlines when we did the data, what we saw for crash history, which thankfully was not severe, but it's something that can obviously always be improved, and the graphic that tells the story of what we'd like to do with improvements at the intersection. I don't expect to read all these. I think you might have a copy of the exhibits already, and if not, we can provide them. But in general terms, I'll just walk around the intersection real quick. In the upper left, with the soon-to-be or recently occupied commercial business here in the bank, looking to do some ramp enhancements, reconstruct the island so that it has appropriate grades to access the new signals, better striping just to designate what is actually there today, where it's actually an exit-only driveway. There's a do not enter sign that exists here today. We just want to make it a little bit more obvious with appropriate striping, a stop line, and a stop sign, so that nobody's influenced. And we've heard reports of the alleged movements of people trying to cut the corner and essentially bypass the intersection on a rare occasion. So we want to make sure that it's more highly identifiable. On each corner, it's really just constructing enough curb line, reconstruction of sidewalk to make sure that we can tie into the existing and make it compliant. Down near the community center, this was a great suggestion that was put in front of us earlier in the concept process, which, as we try to better align some of these lanes and the tapers for the flow of traffic that comes from Springdale onto Walpole, we would have had to have gotten rid of all the spaces here. There was a suggestion that we did investigate, and as part of this plan, to do just a minor pull-out area here, so the sidewalk would bend around two new fully accessible ADA stalls right near the new community center that's off and outside the influence of traffic, with areas to get in and out of the vehicles. And it just happens to fit within two existing utility poles, so we don't have to replace any of those large spans and utility poles themselves. In this area that's masked out is where we would recommend removing the existing crosswalk, just because of how the parking stalls and the influences of queued traffic creates a dangerous situation. So we would encourage, with the brand new signal, to make sure that we can bring those pedestrians up to the intersection to cross in a safer area. Also part of the plan, knowing that today all the signals are post mounted on the very edge of the road, the stats have shown us over many years that it is a degraded safety situation that can be enhanced if the signals were placed on mast arms, or the arms that come out over the lanes, to be directly in line with the lanes. It has a way of, in some reports, improving the crash history by as much as 49%. In the area on the lower left, this is where there are 4 on-street stalls today. They do have a restriction today that nobody's supposed to be parking there during the busy commuter hours. But we would recommend that this would become a change in the lane use, so that the through lane could be appropriately lined with Center Street on the other side, and create a pocket for that very heavy left turn for those that go from Center Street onto Walpole Street. This is, obviously talking about sidewalks and signals, but with the type of changes that we would do, we would probably have new conduits under the road. And with that in mind, and the changes in striping, we would look to do pavement resurfacing for pretty much everything that you see that's in color, so that it would look like a fully improved intersection with new pavement, new striping, new signs, and new signals. And again, this is something that the state is willing to put up to $1 million towards construction, which is very good news. This was just a text description of everything that I just mentioned. The only thing I'll focus on right now is, depending on the type of traffic signal equipment, more of the aesthetic portion of what I'll talk about shortly, it might add some costs. It might be slightly over $1 million, but I know that Kevin's been working with you on a budget standpoint to plan for a potential town portion of funding, that we can always talk through the design process to see if that's something that's attractive to the town. As far as what our analysis shows us is that, and we did do a sensitivity check that we looked at our data. We worked with our vendor, because the first traditional results indicated that it was operating just hunky-dory, and that there were moderate delays. But we knew from our own field observations that that was not the case. So we did a deeper dive on exactly how traffic is working and operating at this intersection specifically, gaps between cars and things like that. Even when we did our revised analysis that showed more realistic results, and then we looked at what we're looking to do for the improvements, we're looking at something that would result in a 20% improvement or 27% reduction in delays on Center Street northbound during the morning, but as much as a 60% benefit in the evening by putting in that new left turn pocket and some of the other signal efficiencies. So even though we're not adding lanes, technically we're not widening out for new lanes, except for that little parking area. The change in technology, the change in lane use with striping, has a way of improving things on your busiest road, Center Street, by anywhere from 27 to 60% in those peak periods. I just wanted to mention something about the benefit of the visibility of those signals, and just to provide a couple visual examples of other very recent projects that we've worked on, where there was older technology or older, I'll call it uglier traffic signal equipment. There was a time period there where, regular galvanized gray poles were kind of the norm. But thankfully, MassDOT has funded other more pleasing colors, features, and styles. This is a project that we just completed at Massachusetts Ave and Worthing Road in Lexington, where they opted to go with green colored fluted ornamental poles. Certain things we can't change color-wise based on federal standards and state standards, but even how it blends in, you can see on the right in particular, for through traffic that's going straight through the intersection, how those green indications are directly over the lane, and provide what we call better positive guidance for vehicles instead of trying to look to the left and right, which is distracting them from viewing maybe a turning car directly in front of them. So something like this design that's in front of you from Lexington is something that would be similar. And some of the mast arms may not be as long in Dover as you see here, but to be able to have those signal heads right in front of you, so that your focus is more direct and you're able to see a car that might be turning left directly in front of you. This is just a zoomed in example on the left of that same piece of equipment. You can see the fluted poles, you can see the special top, the ornamental base, just a post that is colored the same color with an octagonal base. There's another one that we just finished for the city of Newton, not too far away from you, in what's called Petty Square, where same type of fluted ornamental poles, in a more of a downtown area with brand new pavements, a raised intersection, but black equipment instead of green. We also have several examples. One's right outside our corporate offices in Lawrence that is just round poles. One in Newton that we did several years ago on Parker Street for pedestrian improvement. Again, a round pole. What I will say is that if you go just a little distance away, it's very difficult to tell the difference between a round painted pole and a fluted pole. And there are potential benefits long-term for the town, if you didn't have a desire for fluted poles, because they're easier and quicker to replace if there was ever an accident or a maintenance item. It's a lot quicker and easier to get round poles than it is the special fluted poles. We didn't want to stop at just traffic data, but we want to make sure that we could answer any questions about what the parking situation looks like in town center. So we did a pretty deep dive on parking outside the townhouse, on Springdale Ave and Center Street, but also behind the new community center. We did it for an extended period from 11:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. in late October, after the operations at the community center had kind of settled in, to make sure that it was more of a normalized condition. There were only a couple time periods on a couple different areas where parking was just about saturated, but you can see with the greens and yellows that there's still a wealth of parking nearby. And for the 5 stalls that would be impacted as part of our proposed design, you have significant reserve capacity immediately adjacent to it, where it's not going to be a true real impact in any particular way. But we want to make sure that we could document that for you, because that's typically a question that we get when we do work in town centers. So next steps, we hope that you can endorse our concept plan, but this isn't the end of the journey. If we see things that change from what we've shown you this evening, we would look to visit back with the select board to make sure that we could review some of those details or changes with you before it gets ready to go out to bid or things like that. But we would look to get the design completed by the fall, so that it's a great time to bid for projects for spring and summer of the following year. And as I think somebody said, traffic's a little bit lighter in the summer. So if we can get this constructed and improved while people are on vacation and schools aren't in session, that would be our goal. But that's a summary of where we've been and the merits of our project. And I'm certainly happy to answer any questions.
So,
Robert, I've got a couple of quick updates that might be useful for everyone.
okay.
First, an update on the parking at the Carroll Community Center. When that was originally striped, they thought that everyone drove a Prius or smaller car. That doesn't happen in the town of Dover. So they are restriping it, and they're going to lose 4 or 5 spaces in that main lot. Second update with the community center is the road going from the community center onto Springdale, or the driveway leaving the community center, is only meant to be for emergency or special event only. That is not supposed to be a normal egress, and it is striped and signed accordingly. Let's see. On your new proposed handicap accessible parking spaces in front of the Carroll Community Center, I don't know if it makes a hill bean's worth of difference, but there's not 1 but 2 sets of water pipes underneath there. So something to keep in if you're digging down. Oh, and then parking, the issue that we have with parking is more on peak basis. If there's an event at the townhouse, if there's an event at the Carroll Community Center, at the Charles River School, Dover Days is all of 1 day a year, but it's the and I haven't even mentioned a possible future rail trail and parking in the center of town to access it. So I think parking is more of a premium. Just wanted to make you aware of that. And I do have one more, and that is it's a biggie, and that Dover is a one light town, and we're going to go from having rather quaint and unnoticeable light poles to turning into, I don't care how you paint them, I don't care what you're saying, you're now going to have massive lights on 4 poles reaching across the intersection. And in my very humble opinion, it is just not within the character of the town. So my question to you is how imperative are there overhead beams to this whole plan? Because the main reason you cited was accident reduction, and I don't want to jinx us here, but you open your report by saying that the accident incidence is low for that intersection. So if that's the reason we're doing it, then I have to scratch my head. But how important are those overhead beam lights? Because we would get extreme pushback unless I miss my guess.
What I can tell you is that I have not designed a post-mounted intersection in probably 20 years. And that as a designer, I probably would not design a continued state of having a post-mounted situation um, uh, for capacity and safety, because the visibility of the heads on the side does lead to a lack of driver attention to where they're looking and when they're um, proceeding. You know, part of that is just operator influences, but I can tell you that it's a considerable aspect of um, state of the art for efficiency and safety. And some of those things are very much intermingled, but I can tell you that I worked in several communities that were apprehensive to do things like this. Wayland and Lexington and others that um, uh, changes to the intersection and trying to mitigate things. And I think you said it well that it's still a lot of steel that might be in front of you that is a change from today. But my hope is that it's something that we can all be proud of that tries to blend in as best as we can aesthetically, but will be a very robust capacity and safety enhancement. So I feel very strongly about it.
Kevin,
well, unfortunately, I feel equally strongly against, but.
Well, I feel perhaps a little bit contrary to Dave. I sort of understand the concern about how it fits into the sort of current town environment. But I really do buy into Kevin's suggestion about visibility and safety and throughput. I mean, at the moment, it's fairly difficult to get through that intersection. And a lot of it, in my opinion, has to do not just with heavy traffic, but the difficulty of flowing traffic through the intersection, and the lights play an important part of that. So I'm not quite as skeptical as you are on that, Dave.
Right. So
Kevin,
I think it's a character of the town issue. And I don't think that we ought to just gloss over it tonight and proceed.
So, change is hard, but at the same time, we also have to acknowledge that things have changed for safety reasons. And when Kevin first said that they were recommending overhangs, I was thinking, wow, this is going to be really hard for Dover to embrace. However, looking at what you did in Lexington, and I actually know that intersection, it blended in much better than what I was expecting. However, I also know that Parker Street intersection, and that is just plug ugly. I don't, those poles are just horrible. So I understand Dave's concerns, but I am one of those people that need to turn onto Walpole Street. And I have been backed up and afraid that I'm going to get hit, because if there is a car parked, you feel pressure to turn because you're backing up traffic and the person behind you is trying to get around you. And to Dave's point, people do drive big cars or those going through the intersection. So from a safety perspective, I really do understand this recommendation. However, I do expect people in town to complain, but I would like to just talk a little bit to the police chief and and understand the how these overhangs improve safety. Certainly the technology I think would help a lot, because my understanding is it has some machine learning built into it. So it would measure the backup and maybe allow the light to be green longer during those peak periods. I do think, unfortunately, I'm a little concerned about the parking. Again, it's not every day, but it is during those peak periods. And maybe we need to think about how we would direct people to park in different lots. Like, for instance, during Dover days, if you could make people aware that perhaps the post office parking lot is available to park in, then maybe they wouldn't be parking all the way down Center Street and Dedham Street.
Yeah, and what I can do too is, I guess, attest to, I think it was Mr. Haviland that mentioned about the change in striping in the parking lot, that I do believe that less is more, as you contemplate more appropriate widths of striped stalls back there. I think you're going to find that it gets better utilized and you have more parking in real terms, because my staff and myself, we've witnessed where cars back there will park like every other stall because it's super tight in the cases where, based on the existing striping. So if you gave a little bit more space to each one, and a standard width is 9 feet, those are shy of that. You may find that as a traditional parking lot dimension, that you actually get much better utilization. So there are things that we can do to work with the town to try to identify certain things in close proximity to the intersection. We looked at different ways to try to minimize even those 5 that we see being lost. But as we look in other areas on other segments in town center, that's something where we might be able to discover, between Mr. McCabe and myself, other ideas that may be not directly related to the project, but might mitigate some of these aspects.
Right, I'm just wondering, the townhouse parking lot is very poorly used. It's not striped at all. It's like a free for all.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was striped, if maybe you could get more cars in there.
Yeah, we could certainly take a look.
The other question I had for you, Kevin, was how dependent are we on these overhanging lamp holders for installing this new technology for traffic control? Do we need something that really has good visibility over the intersection?
As a professional in the industry, obviously it's my recommendation, but I also know that Mass DOT just endorsed the concept last week. If this did not have the mast arms, they could potentially feel differently about the project.
Well, that's an unknown. And my question for you is, since the problem we seem to be focusing on solving is north and southbound on Center Street, could we get away with 2 poles only addressing those directions and leave Walpole and Springdale with the lampposts? I mean, you're turning the center of our town into, it's like a major intersection getting onto Route 128. And it's a major leap. So what I'm trying to do is come up with, what can we do that allows the functionality, that allows most of the relief, but doesn't turn us into a main intersection from a much larger town.
Another good question, and I think we've also done designs in the past where we can limit it to 2 arms over the intersection, but we put them at a slight diagonal, so they have some improved visibility, significant visibility improvements for 2 approaches, and maybe minor improvements for the 2 side streets. So we could investigate a 2 mast arm type design that's more at a design diagonal heading into the intersection, in lieu of 4 separate ones. We could certainly investigate that.
Now, do you have software that may be able to take the intersection and put in, the more decorative poles and show what it would look like and how it may fit in to the town? I think that would be helpful as well.
Sure. What I can do is take a couple, I can discuss it with our landscape architect that works in our firm. And he does renderings that can,
Yeah, that would be great.
from a couple different approaches, to try to introduce something that's to scale of what might represent a mast arm, in that field of view. That's something I can investigate with our team and get back to you through Mr. McCabe.
No, I think, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So, and I think it would be really helpful to take the actual intersection and demonstrate what it potentially could look like.
Oh, one more quick question for both Kevins. I didn't see it, but will any trees need to come down?
No. No, I'm not aware of any at this point that have to come down.
Perfect.
I don't think
caveat with the corner tree on if we had to do a longer diagonal mast arm, likely the one on the corner of Springdale and Centerwood. Typically with the longer designs like that, they're a much larger mast arm. And then just to the safety aspect of these, you need those infrared cameras to align with the lanes that you see. Otherwise, the infrared technology that picks up the queuing in the cars is obsolete. And then the whole defeats essentially the whole purpose of this. Another safety component that this intersection is going to add is Opticom, which is what you see in cities and stuff that will blink when emergency apparatus respond through an intersection to queue it green. So every ambulance that passes through the town center now, I'm sure you've seen it and heard it, as the lights don't change and it doesn't help progress a passenger through to Needham, BMI, or Boston, or wherever they may be heading. In the top of the screen, we're going to put conduit and a preemptive switch for Dover Fire when they're responding to calls to help them change the lights as well. And it should be worth noting about the parking. We actually coordinated with Director Galoni, so that was when they had a concurrent event at the community center to kind of simulate more of a peak usage of this area. So the Dover days, that's an anomaly, and they take up every inch of the DPW parking lot, as you all know. And then the Charles River always coordinates when they have a big event with us to utilize the highways parking lot for their events.
So we're basically losing the parking spaces on the same side as the community center, 3 over there, right?
And then I believe, and then it's 2 on the Center Street side of the townhouse. Okay. We look to do a box widening there to add additional spaces, but there's a mature tree and there's a fire hydrant, so we looked at that and didn't see that as kind of feasible to lose, to have to move the fire hydrant and remove the mature tree to add the 2 spots there.
Yeah, exactly. And there's 4 here in front of the townhouse, but these are the ones that today have the sign that restricts the use, prohibits the use during peak commuter times.
But there's sometimes cars still there.
Exactly. Yeah. And, so it's these 4, and then there's one more because we can restripe in a different way to mitigate some of the loss over here. So it's really 4 on center and 1 over here near the community center.
Okay.
Is it possible to think a little bit outside the box and go to Dedham Street across the Legion, across from the Legion, where could additional parking spaces be added there?
And that's what I indicated that, it's something that Kevin and I can take a look at because there may be other opportunities in other roadway segments in town center where we can get creative. And we actually, DOT allowed us to get a couple extra counts down there from a traffic standpoint. It's something that I've just looked at on my own curiosity over time too for different creative options down there. So nothing I've shared with Kevin even, but we can talk about ideas where maybe we find even more than those 5 on other roadway segments.
Because you did pick one up by removing that crosswalk between the townhouse and the community center.
You are correct. Yep.
And I'm pausing on whether or not that's a good idea, because we're going to have a lot of families and little kids that are going to want to go back and forth, and to not have a crosswalk there makes me pause. So, I mean, for one parking space, I would rather go to the other side of the townhouse and put in, let's say, 5 there on, I think that's Dedham Street, and or whatever road the Legion is on, and also that little connecting street between Dunkin' Donuts and the Dover Market. Could some parking be put there? I'm just trying to think outside the box and brainstorm. Because again, from a safety standpoint, for one parking space, that makes me pause.
Steve, just if the board doesn't mind, just to hop in, one, just on that one, just from personal experience, I cross there a lot. That is, I find it to be a very dangerous intersection. And now I either go to the one closer to the townhouse driveway in the market, or down to the light, just because when the cars are parked there, I don't feel comfortable. So just to lend some credence to what the engineers found. The other thing is, just for the board, and certainly for any public that's listening, this group, as we worked, obviously offline before coming to you, we were very aware of the sensitivity of change and the possibility of a reaction to having these sort of arms. So it was not made without that. These decisions weren't made without that consideration. I think the reason we're bringing this forward is this is the recommendation of the professionals as the safest option, and then 2, does give the ability to install technology to pick up the traffic and change the lights to help move traffic. And we thought that was important, to bring to you in the engineer's recommendation. And I think I'll ask Kevin DeAndre to run down the fact. My understanding, and this will be very important, is that if the arms we have now are not in compliance and ought not to be installed in any future intersections. And my understanding was this funding may not occur, or would not occur, if we didn't bring it up to current, up to these sort of standards. So I think that's really important, because whether that may not change people's opinions, but it's either we do this with the grant money or we don't do it. And so I think that's an important factor. So if we could just run that down, because that plays a big role in how this proceeds, I think.
Right. And
yeah, and I guess I said it somewhat cryptically before, but I do feel very strongly that when DOT makes an investment, they want to make sure that it's going to be a good return on the investment, and the newer technology and new standards for layout, I think, are a big part of that with the mast arms. And it's something that we can ask the question about, but I'm pretty sure I know the answer already.
Yeah, I think it would be good to confirm it, and I think it would go a long way if we could get, if you could show us what it would look like with the, I was surprised at how unobtrusive they looked at that Lexington intersection. I think the green kind of makes them fade away somewhat.
But there's going to be 12 lights hanging in the middle of the town. So that's why it's pretty industrial looking.
Yeah,
right. I think
one of the other areas that I'm sort of interested in here is trying to get some sort of sense of how traffic might grow over the next few years. And part of the preserving the character of the town is to get that traffic away from that intersection as quickly as we can, so we do preserve that more rural sort of feel for the town. And I think with appropriate lighting, that could be really significant if we experience traffic increases the way we have in the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of those cases where we're balancing safety with aesthetics. And so we
Right.
need to really understand the decision that that we're making. I mean, that truly is a bottleneck in town. And I think for me personally, it would be extremely helpful to see what it might look like in a rendering.
Sure.
I'm
Um,
with you there,
Is there a
Robert.
particular angle that you are interested in, where I could focus our efforts to something that is a vantage point that you feel is, you know, a more
so,
important?
so I think, you're gonna see, are you gonna see 6 lights overhanging when you come up Center Street? Is that what you're gonna see? 3 on each side? So you're gonna
Yeah,
have,
but only three would be pointing towards that direction of traffic. So three would be illuminated um, uh, in a particular direction. In fact, in this layout, it may not be that clear, but Center Street northbound, so going from right to left, there are only two. That's the requirement. They have to be spaced out by at least 8 feet, and those are more or less centered over the lane. Because of the different lane controls, signal controls for the left turn pocket, that's why we have a third one on this approach. Um, One's for the left turn lane, and the other two are for the through. Um, we could potentially reduce the Walpole Street one from 3 to 2. Um, but likewise, because we have a separate left turn pocket on Springdale, that's why these are requiring 3. But we might be able to reduce this by one vehicle signal head. And
great.
at each pole or each end of a crosswalk would have a pedestrian signal head that has very specific requirements. In this upper left, we would actually have both of those pedestrian signal controls on the pole of the mast arm. But because of the layout of the ADA ramps, we could have one on this pole and then a short 8-foot pedestal post, similar to one of those side photos I showed you here. In each case, we try to be very careful about not introducing more than we need to. But unfortunately, and as you can imagine, there are very strict requirements for accessibility, visibility at the state and federal level that requires us to put them in certain places.
So to answer your question, I think we need to see what it looks like from both directions.
Okay.
I
Yeah, so I'll get back with my team.
thank
I
you.
can't imagine DOT is going to have a problem with us doing that extra effort. And I'll look forward to communicating those back to the board. And if we have to do another session like this where we can go through these, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
No, I think that would be
Thank you.
really helpful, and I think it would be good just to get confirmation of whether or not the grant would still be available if we didn't use this technology.
Exactly. And that's really why I'm here this evening, because I want to make sure that we can keep you informed regularly of
Right.
what the aspects of the project are, but also to make sure that as you know, we try to be good stewards of our clients' money, that we can do it in a stepped way that has people on board before we go to the next stage of design, which is more expensive, more detailed, but to make sure that we've got um, that level of buy-in from your board.
Much appreciated. Thank you very much, Kevin.
I
Well, thank
wonder
you
if we
very
could
much.
get
I
a copy
appreciate
of your presentation as well, Kevin.
well, thank you very much for your time, and I look for, and if you have other follow-up questions, please communicate those with Michael and Kevin, and I'm sure they'll share those with us, and we'll get some answers right back to you.
I'm not
Sounds
sure
good.
whether you
Thank
heard
you.
my question there. If it would be possible for us to get a copy of this presentation?
Oh, absolutely.
So it's in the packet, but it doesn't look as good.
Um, oh, was it really? Oh,
Yeah, it
I
was.
I got so focused on the large 195 page document, I didn't go through the packet very thoroughly, obviously.
Well, I think pieces of the presentation were there. I don't
Okay,
think
so that's
those
fine.
slides as is, but yeah, we
The
can get it so
graphics
that
are
it's
much better in the presentation then.
Yeah, happy to provide a copy of this and a PDF copy of the full concept if you want to zoom in on a.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Thank you very much.
Excellent. That's all I have this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a great evening.
Thank you for joining us, Kevin.
My pleasure.
Both
Kevin, now
Kevins.
go enjoy the warmth.
All right, so moving right along, item 1.3. So is Anna here?
Yes, Anna's coming in. There's Anna.
Hey, everybody. How are you?
Good.
Well.
So tonight, this is to approve and accept the expenditure of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Vulnerability Preparedness Grant. Most of us know that as the MVP grant for $100,000 to conduct a climate action plan and resilience seed project. And with us this evening is the chair of the Sustainability Committee, Anna Nagy, who actually is responsible or did much of the heavy lifting in getting this grant. And I understand you sent it in at 11:59. So with 1 minute to spare, you must like
was
the
very last minute.
things, Anna. So, so first of all, thank you for your commitment and helping us get the grant. And so this evening, it's part of our process. We have to vote to accept the grant, but maybe you could just share with us a little bit about, how the committee plans to utilize it, because it comes in two tranches. So one is for the climate action plan, and I know that doesn't cover the full cost of the plan, but then you have this resilience seed project, and I'm not quite sure how that works.
Yeah. So also thanks to Patricia Hudson, who worked on this as well, and the whole sustainability committee. Everyone's been thinking about this, trying to get a sense of if we wanted to do it, giving opinions. So I'll be announcing it at our meeting upcoming, but I know everyone's going to be super excited. The MVP 2.0 program is a planning grant that lets us build this climate action plan. They've got a very structured process. If you saw in the contract, there's reporting requirements we'll have to do to say how we're doing in this this planning effort. We hire a vendor. We work with the community. We identify the goals, the infrastructure, the issues in town related to climate resilience. So flooding, fires, culverts, whatever the deal is, cooling centers, all sorts of stuff. This process is structured to take about 11 months. And in that process, we are tasked with identifying a seed project, which is done with the second half of the funds, to work on something that the community decided was important. They don't give a ton of examples, and honestly, I'm not sure what we'll want to do. That's sort of the point of the planning grant. But the concept behind the seed project is get everyone excited, get the community excited about doing more things in climate resilience. A particularly great incentive here is once we've completed the planning project, we can apply for action grants from the state, which come out of the MVP program for efforts that were identified by the plan or are related to the plan to further improve Dover's infrastructure related to climate resilience. So it's kind of the start of a whole avenue of things we can do. I've got the slide that goes through the timeline if anyone wants it. I can send that around as well, just the state's program.
So the bottom line is the critical path here is to put out an RFP to find vendors then select a vendor and then begin working on the climate action plan. And as part of the climate action plan, there will be a portion of that will be dedicated to community involvement. And through that community involvement, a decision will be made as to how best to use the seed money.
Yeah, that's the general plan. There is a requirement now in the 2.0 program to involve community liaisons, who are folks identified in town who we need to use the grant funds to pay for their time in some reasonable way, to make sure it's worthwhile for them to come and participate in the planning efforts. I'm talking to the coordinator tomorrow about how this typically breaks down, so we can get a good sense of if we need, how much more money we need, how much the vendors typically run. So that's more on the nuts and bolts of how we're going to put it together, how we're going to make it happen. But yeah.
Okay. So now you have a very young committee, and this is the first not young as in it's just newly created.
No, we've been around a year. Just over a year.
It's still newly created, Anna.
Oh yeah. And a year for a committee is early.
So, I learned from our experience with the Housing Task Force, where we also got a community grant, that it's really important to designate somebody in the townhouse that will help work with you, with the committee, to be the point person for the consultant, to help you through the procurement process, to make sure that you get the information that you need from the town for this project. So, I would encourage you maybe to spend some time with Mike, and perhaps we can designate an individual, Mike, that can work with the committee.
That'd be great.
Because it's a lot of money, and it's a whole new process.
Anna, you're comfortable with a timeline, right?
Yeah. Okay. It seems pretty fair. Things that take about a month seem like things that we should be able to do in about a meeting, maybe two.
Okay. And do you envision having sustainability steward this, or are you going to use some from sustainability and then bring in others?
I'm expecting to have sustainability. Like, this is the big project for sustainability, is my expectation. I hope we will have more community interest and involvement, and we will have more folks join the meetings, maybe not the sustainability committee, whatever works there. But my expectation is that this is what the sustainability committee is for.
Right.
I just wanted to see what your thoughts were. Sorry, Robin.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And I'd also encourage you, we had the MBTA Communities Act was a huge success in the sense of getting information out there and getting community involvement. And I really felt that survey tool that was used and was extremely powerful. So I'd encourage you, maybe to talk to Velen and Carol Lisbon and Jody Shu about what they did. And I think, Chris, you helped, and Suzanne helped. It really takes a village. So, I think I could really see Suzanne doing a bunch of creative things to help you
she's awesome.
The outreach as well. So, I think if you just maybe meet with Mike and figure out the best way and who should be the point person at the townhouse, I think it would be really, really helpful. And then Dave being the liaison, I'm sure he's going to be extremely helpful in this process.
It was interesting. I Googled one of these plans, and out of all things, the town of Deerfields came up. And the prompts really are geared towards larger, more urban communities. So we're going to have to adjust a little bit, but that's probably pretty easy to do. And then, Robin, to answer your question, best I can tell, we're going to need Council on Aging, Board of Health, Housing Task Force, Open Space, Planning Board, DPW, and Police and Fire.
So everyone.
Yeah, it literally the whole village. I mean, because I was going through all the prompts, I'm like, we're gonna need everybody. So everyone will get their input.
Excellent.
One of the other things that I found really helpful in the MBTA Communities Act was the public meetings that the planning board held,
Right.
because I think that really helped both getting feedback from the community on what the proposals might be, but also it enabled the planning board to get a better feel of what they had to focus on and what the issues might be going forward. So I think there's real value in having those public meetings.
Right.
No, I agree.
And while we have you here, Anna, how successful was the repair cafe?
I didn't go. It sounded great though.
Right. Oh, I thought you guys sponsored it.
I think there was Council on Aging.
Oh, okay.
But it sounded very cool, and I hope they do it again. Briefly to Dave's point about this being geared toward larger communities, I think it's true. It's geared toward everybody. Sherburne's actually in the process of doing their 2.0. They did the climate action plan first round, so we're joining the second round, but they're redoing theirs, so they have thoughts and opinions about how to do it well. So I just talked to their coordinator about this the other day.
Okay. Yeah, so that's a great data point.
Well, it's a wonderful thing. I mean, we need to be prepared for extreme weather and all the contingencies and bring us into the, let's see, maybe the 20th century before we get to the 21st. So this is terrific. Again, many thanks to you, Patricia, the whole committee. It's very exciting because the other opportunities on the other side of this with more grants. And it's exactly what we told town meeting. It's like you can cut off the spigot or you can expand the pipes. So this is great.
So Dave, would you like to make the motion?
I can. You're going to make me scroll because.
All right, I can do it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I move to approve the grant contract agreement between the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs and the Town of Dover to conduct a Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program MVP 2.0 dated February 2nd, 2026. Approval of the agreement is contingent upon Town Council's approval and updating the contract to add the town administrator as the contract manager.
Well said. Second.
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
Aye, Dave Haviland.
Aye, Cam Hudson.
Thank you very much, Anna, and we look forward to watching this this project start and the final climate action plan.
Yeah. Thank you. We're really excited.
Thank you.
Great. Well, have a great night.
You too.
She's gone already. It's dinner time. All right. And the next item is 1.4. And that is it's a regular agenda item and it's update on town meeting, the budget calendar, deadlines, all the fun stuff.
Yeah, all the fun stuff. So, as Ron said, this is a standing item. It feels longer, but we just met last week and did a review of our preliminary budget presentation. But I think, the board's aware of it. I think it's good for the public here also. I mean, since then, I think Chris has made daily alterations to the budget. So, when we say it's preliminary, we really mean it. We've already had some changes in reductions in capital. The schools have been working through their budget process. So that will continue to refine that and determine the best point to do a second updated presentation of the overall budget. The warrant committee will begin their departmental reviews next week on the 9th. So I believe it's the 9th and then the 23rd and 25th, I think, are the dates they'll be reviewing departmental budgets. Departments are preparing for those. The warrant committee had developed template presentations for each department so that, at a minimum, every department's, sharing similar information. Some departments are going well beyond what was the minimum requested, but I think at least there'll be a baseline level of information that's presented. And as we talked about before, this is new, hasn't been done in I think quite a number of years, but I think it's a great thing. And I think it'll be a good experience for departments to have to present and talk more about their departments, what they do, and why it's important for the warrant committee to be educated. And all these are on YouTube, so it's a great opportunity for the public at any point to watch and learn as well, as they hopefully prepare for town meeting.
Also, I'd like to give a shout out to Chris and Suzanne and the warrant committee on really spending time streamlining not only what the Blue Book looks like, but the whole Blue Book process. And when Chris and I were going over the many iterations of the budget this week, he showed me the templates that they've set up to really help the warrant committee and encourage liaisons to write what goes into the book. And there's an approval process for it. So it's a template with the warrant article provided by legal counsel and then recommendations. And it's a template, which I think will really help it. So this way, everything doesn't fall on the chair of the warrant committee, and you're starting the process immediately. So you can have different warrant articles signed off on really early on in the process.
Yeah. And just to pile on the thanks, Chris and Suzanne also worked on a warrant article tracker. So there's a way for the warrant committee to keep up to date. Suzanne can keep it updated so that everyone at any time can look and see where things stand on each of the articles. So again, between both of those things, open hearing being earlier this year, I just think we're going to be in a really awesome spot to produce a real high quality Blue Book without all that last minute panic and rush that we often run into, which will be great.
Right. And we're also, we should get budget 2.0 from the schools, and we are expecting a significant decrease in the budget from the budget that was presented to us. We also, I believe, by the end of this week, we'll have the final increase from West Suburban, maybe the end of this week or next week. And then Chris and Molly, the town accountant, met with the actuaries today so that we have a better sense on the supplemental funding that we need to do. And we'll also get a summary of what we have sitting in our trust accounts. So I think, we're making a lot of progress. There are a ton of balls in the air, and hopefully by our next meeting, we'll be able to present a new budget with all of the information that we have collected in the interim. But we're making a lot of progress, and I hope Molly feels this way. It's a great way. She came in at the worst time, but the best time, because it's just a way for her to really be forced to understand where we stand, what all the accounts are, what we need to look at. And we can't forget all the work Joanne's doing as well. So.
That's right.
I might add a couple of comments. First, on the Capital Budget Committee is really getting underway now.
Excuse me, Cam, do you mind turning your volume up just a touch? I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Oh, are you? So what am I doing wrong here? Let me have a quick look at my...
It's just so soft-spoken. Dave he sounds like a DJ.
That's probably the nicest way it's ever been put, but thank you.
No, you do, Dave. You carry your voice.
Well, I'm sorry. Is that better if I...
It is. Thank you.
It is.
I just wanted to say that the capital budget is now committee is starting to get really engaged in trying to evaluate the various capital proposals. And there's a big one, again, from the schools, the rooftop replacement project at the regional school. That is sort of somewhat up in the air given Sherborne's financial challenges as well. So that's a big unknown at the moment, whether Sherborne will actually approve funding for their part of that. So that might have a big relieving impact on us in some sort of weird way. If we might be able to spread out capital expenditures a little bit more that way. The other thing, I attended the warrant committee meeting last night, and there was a really interesting discussion, and I think this is perhaps of interest to you, Kevin and Chris, on key performance indicators, which is a new sort of questionnaire that they're sending out to the various departments, committees, and commissions to get those committees to start thinking seriously about what are the things that they're trying to optimize for in these budgets. And there was a discussion there relating to how do these sort of things roll up into the town, because individual departments don't drive the key performance indicators of the town. And there was a suggestion that maybe these things need to really be run through you, Mike, to get a sense of how they all fit together as part of what the town is trying to accomplish. So I think you might hear some more about that from the warrant committee over the next couple of weeks as well.
When any news on the Collins Center study? Is that imminent or distant?
That's something I'm continuing to work on with the Collins Center. Admittedly, it is a little bit behind schedule compared to what we intended to do. Partly, I would say mostly is that it's my own fault for having a busy run up to Christmas and being out of the office, but I am in contact with them. The current status right now is they've met with Joanne and kind of built out our whole kind of existing debt portfolio. And now we're going to be moving on to taking what we have existing in the portfolio, what we're looking at in terms of requests, and trying to shore up the funding plan with it to really pull together the final report. So it is a little bit delayed, but when I have a better idea of when that's going to be coming in, I'll be sure to share.
But it's not going to be part of this budget process, is what I'm hearing.
It is and it isn't. So a full-blown report won't be available, but we are looking, Joanne with the Collins Center is projecting out what the additional debt service would look like for, like, what does it look like if you do everything? What does it look like if you just do some of it, so that we will have options with respect to funding? And there's still, and Chris, tell me if I'm stepping out of bounds here.
No.
But the other thing, Molly is trying to get a handle on projecting free cash, because those things go hand in hand. So we need to look at everything together. We need to look at our free cash. We need to look at, because free cash is a misnomer. It's not all free cash. You have to have some of it, right? So we need to understand what I'm going to call is our restricted free cash, which is the free cash that we just need to maintain our credit rating, and that's best practice. And then we need to look at the remainder and figure out what is unencumbered, because we already designated uses for some of that excess free cash. And then we also need to look at what we have in the stabilization funds and the reserve funds, because this was all part of our free cash strategy to move things into designated accounts. So we really need to look at this picture holistically. Right. And that's, Chris and Molly and Joanne are working together to try and pull this all together for us, so that the next pass of the budget, we're going to have a much more holistic picture and we can make meaningful decisions or educated decisions. But one of the things that has already been pulled together is the existing debt and what is under the levy and what is outside of the levy. So all of that is really helpful already. We just don't have the full picture.
Right. And that's what the work that is being done is, we have the projections and running some scenarios, right? Like, hey, what if, we have the $1 million threshold for a borrowing project right now on capital. What does it look like if the threshold is lower and we're able to take on more projects, for within levy debt? How does that model out and what impact does it have? So, I don't know if the full report is going to be done by town meeting, but we'll definitely have some insights that'll help guide us for sure. And I think that'll be helpful. And then shortly right after, we'll continue on for the full report. Hopefully the insights we'll have will help us make some decisions this year and have us a more clearer look. And it is kind of fortunate that some of the capital is getting shifted outside of 27 because we might have the ability to incorporate more into the plan in the out years. So, long way to say that it's a little delayed, but it is still in the works. And when we have some information to share, we certainly will.
Well, that'd be great because it's just education. I mean,
Yep.
you need to learn.
Right.
So that's good to know that you'll get what you need out of it. It might not be in a pretty format, but you got the guts.
Exactly. And that's, working with a lot of stuff. Side note, we're going to be hopefully certifying free cash relatively soon. So we'll have a finalized number on that, which is a little bit earlier, still not on time, but earlier than we had it last year. So like Robin referenced earlier with some of the, digging into the OPEB contributions and some of these other kind of funding pieces that we've utilized in the past, trying to pull those all together and making a mock-up scenario for what ifs. What if we pulled funding away from another aspect and diverted it to capital? And what would be the most efficient use if we were to do that? Would it be to borrow and carry debt service in the levy and supplement in another way with some of those funds pulled in from other areas? It's good ideas, but we want to have a concrete way to display that so everyone can discuss. So that's what we're hoping to bring forward.
Right.
But forgive my ignorance, but what is the process for changing that $1 million capital limit?
I think it was just a policy, and at the end of the day, the Board of Selectmen have to vote it. And at the time when we put the policy in place, our capital was somewhere around $500,000 a year. And then we had these one-off big projects. So at that point, it made a ton of sense to say, all right, projects over $1 million are going to be, excluded debt, and everything else will just pay out of the operating levy. But
that's a relief. Actually, it means
right, times have changed. So, we really need to say, and Chris and I talked about, it can't really be just black and white. So maybe we add a useful life component to it as well, because it sort of makes sense for longer term, projects with a longer useful life. Those seem to be a better candidate for debt service. So, so we need, when we put the policy in place, it worked, but it doesn't really work anymore. And that's the beauty of policies. They need to be changed so that they make sense for where you are now.
That's why we're going to update them every 3 years from now on.
Right. It just, and you know what, I think what's really important for everybody to understand, if they need to be updated in year 2, that's okay as well. They should be living documents, and you should update them, as needed. When you're a public company, you have to comply with Sarbanes-Oxley. So that means you have to have narratives for every single process that you have, every financial process. some HR processes. And every year, you know, we would have this external consultant come in and go over our processes. And every single year, the narrative changed. I mean, we weren't doing things, and you got dinged if you weren't doing them the way you said you were doing them. So it's just unbelievable how you have to really look at these things and say, does it still work for me? Should my policy change?
Well, the other thing is, I mean, you're not going to go out to bond for small amounts of money.
Right.
But so the million has a practical level too. But we have a whole bunch of things that maybe there are 800,000 or 900,000, so they don't quit. But if you put three of them together, it more than fits the million.
Yep.
So I like your idea very much of adding in an element of useful life. And you know, we'll be talking about whether it's in the levy limit or excluded debt and all that. That's coming up. But yeah, I'm glad to know that the policy is it's not ironclad. It's to be worked with, and given the nature of where we are today, let's do what's right for the town and the budget.
Right.
Also,
that's
the thing that really is useful for me to know that it's a policy that we can change if we decide that it's no longer, the old one's no longer appropriate, and that we don't have to go through some bureaucratic process to accomplish that. So that's really was the purpose of my question.
Right. And I think
that discussion.
Right. And I think it's important that the staff let us know when policies don't work for them. You know, the other thing that the Collins Center is looking into, which is there are communities now that lease their police cars. It's like a fraction of the annual cost. So that's something they're also going to look into for us and present a proposal.
Yeah. And if I just add one kind of final thought is that although it's disappointing that we're behind schedule on this and we don't have the full report in our hand now, we are, you know, whatever solutions are identified, it's not just for next year's budget. We are looking at this 5-year chunk. So we'll have a ton more insights, hopefully maybe not have everything solved, but at least have a really good pathway forward in terms of funding all the requests we have in front of us for the next, you know, 4 or 5 years.
Right. And that's a really important point, Chris. You know, we're creating a roadmap for the future, and we've identified that we never want to be in the position we're in today again. So we're going to make sure that we have, you know, that we have a framework that we follow that will ensure that this never happens again.
Well, I've lived here long enough. That's not the first time we've heard this said. So,
well, one of the frustrating aspects of all of this is that we are really trying to allocate reserves to have the funds to pay for these capital items over time, but we're sort of in this bind of not being able to do that anywhere near as quickly as we'd like to, simply because we've just got so many capital items that are hitting us. We can't do it all at once.
Right. And, you know, Chris and Mike and I have had the conversation. It's also educating departments. You know, as much as we would love to give you everything this year, you really need to be able to assess what is a priority and what isn't, because of the bind we're in. There's just so much we can do on an annual basis. You know, which is why, you know, potentially leasing police cars is somewhat an interesting thing to look at. You know, and the great news is, I know this will be a surprise to you all, we wouldn't be the first town to do this. there's like a proven path ahead of us.
Could you lease fire engines as well?
The terms of the lease, Robin, you get 10,000 miles.
Yeah. I think that could be a likely result of this, study too is really highlighting that we are constrained. We all kind of know it and feel it, but if we can identify which way we're specifically constrained and what that constraint is, I think that'll be a powerful insight to help us prioritize what projects ultimately need to get funded.
Well, Chris, you said it very well.
David, so to follow up on your line, it's 10,000 miles, but unlimited engine runtime, whatever that means. But that's what I've heard a lot about the engine runtime, not just the miles.
I'm pleased we're going through this process. It allows all the departments to understand that the answer is not no, it's when. Right. Because we can't do it all at once. So literally it's a prioritization list and with a roadmap to get everyone what they need as soon as possible. But we can't do everything at once.
Right. And that's for one reason why we in the Capital Budget Committee are trying to convince departments to look at their own priorities, because they can prioritize these things much better than we as sort of independent observers can. At the moment, we're not having great success there. So, Mike, you might want to encourage people to do that as well.
Well, they're going to start seeing the word no for the next fiscal year. But that there's a salve which says no, but you're in line for 28 or 29. So it's not no, it's just you're in line. So
right. And I do think, we've through the Collins process, I think through this approach Capital's taking, departments are aware. I think for so many years the town just said no, but never really had a plan of when, right? It was just no. So we all piled up. And we're taking a different approach. And so, yes, to Dave, your point, it is no, but it's not the same no as before. It's a no, but we're going to slot it in the right spot. And I think that's important for departments to understand.
Right. Yeah. Right. All right. So the next item is goals and priority. And that's you, Mike.
Yeah, so I was actually really excited about this. So we just met last week. So in my head, I said, I'm not going to have much to talk about. But I sat down and went through, and it was kind of impressive. So tonight we had the Sustainability Committee presenting the grant for their climate action plan that's on your goals and objectives. It's moving forward. We have the presentation on the intersection improvements. Reviewing and supporting that effort was on your goals and objectives. I know I won't steal anyone's thunder, but I'll just mention, I know Dave will talk about the 3 to 5 committee and his resurrection of that group. Cam will talk about pedestrian safety working group, but again, both have met since our last meeting. Same is true for our housing task force. A rail trail working group, again, all on your goals and objectives. Also, the personnel board is in the process of reviewing a draft compensation and classification plan. That's been a multi-month effort working with a consultant. I think the board is well aware that's been undergoing, and once it goes through the pass of the personnel board, that will be before you to look at as well. But that's been a lot of work, so that also is coming to fruition. And then the last thing I had, and I'll share my screen. I know the board had a chance to look at this, but I just wanted to show off. If it works. Is the website up?
No, it's not up. Oh, here it is. There it is.
Okay. So this, thanks to Chris and Suzanne for their work. This is the newly redesigned Town of Dover website. Personally, I love the seasonal appropriate photo, and I talked to Chris. We're going to make sure we rotate it through the seasons. And thanks to the police department for the drone shot. So, it's a lot of the content. So before we made this switch, a lot of time and effort went through looking at the content on the websites, pages that were just old, departments. As I think the board knows, we don't have like a true webmaster. Each department mostly manages their own pages. Different departments had different styles of doing that. A lot of pages would get created, never cleaned up, or deleted when they weren't appropriate anymore. So a lot of time went into that. And then this nice refresh and redesign in terms of where the information is, popular links that can be updated as we find out what are people actually searching for and clicking on, so we can make it even more accessible for people. We continue to highlight the news flashes, a way to indicate important dates and important functions that'll be coming up. And, they're all hyperlinks. So if somebody's coming and, oh yeah, town meeting, they can click and it'll bring you right to the town meeting page and you can get all your information. And of course, always with our meeting information. So, we are soliciting feedback. I appreciate some of the board members already shared some, and we've started to incorporate that. We've got some feedback from the planning board, which we've incorporated, and we'll continue to do so. We talked about a little bit more highlighting our online permitting, which is such a great feature. I know specifically, I think a couple of board members referenced the driveway permit. So Suzanne's actually going to be working on some educational pieces for our website, social media, and newsletter on, hey, did you know you needed this? Suzanne's been doing a great job of different rules and bylaws we have. So that would be really helpful. So, we just encourage you to continue to poke around. We'll continue to work on it, but just, visually, I think it's extremely attractive. It's very user friendly, and we'll continue to improve it and welcome any feedback.
Right. And I will say, which I passed along to Suzanne, the search and Chris, I did a couple of searches just to see if I could find things. And it was much easier. Like it actually, on all the searches I did, I got the right link the first or second time.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's funny there, Robin. I did the same search for this, the technical memorandum that the Engineering Corp produced, and that didn't come up at all. So it's still a little bit iffy as to what appears and what doesn't, but it's certainly a significant improvement.
Oh, I think it's great.
Because it really helps her if you can kind of tell her, because then she's able to fix things.
I was planning on doing that. I just looked at that this evening.
So I do have one comment on the search feature. Is actually in our other Collins Center project with the comprehensive communications plan from when I first got on, we had some extra project hours left over. So Brianna, the woman that helped us with our plan, she's a Civic Plus website pro. And when Suzanne first joined, we ended up spending some extra project hours getting Suzanne trained up from a true professional. And one of the insights that we learned about the search feature, and something that our website was missing, is that in the documents and pages and specific tabs, there's tags in keywords you're supposed to put in kind of the metadata of the site, and that greatly enhances the search capability. It's unfortunately something that really wasn't a strategy used when we first got this website. So we're really trying to go through, the 800 so pages and just trying to populate keywords when we have time. So hopefully the search function improves from that, but that really, everyone was kind of looking for answers on the search capability, and it looks like that was a big component as to why it might have not been operating to some people's desire.
Right.
That's actually a perfect explanation. That'll do it. Ugh.
And that's all I had for our goals and objectives.
All right, so we on to 1.6.
So now we're on to 1.6, which is the Board of Selectmen updates. So I'll go first and I'll try to keep it brief. It has been quite busy, but I think Mike and Chris have touched on a lot of the things that have been done. So as Mike mentioned, we did have the Housing Task Force meeting. Our consultant, the Barra Group, is working with us to put together the goal of coming up with different options for housing, for types of housing in the town of Dover. We actually set up what would you call it? Like a community portal, which you can access from the town's website, which reminds people what the housing plan mission is, the housing task force mission is, and then everything that we do will get updated on this portal. So we are starting to roll out community engagement. So we will put together the community engagement plan, and it will be added onto the portal, which can be accessed through the town website. So that is, I think at the end of the day, we are going, the goal of the committee is to really to provide the town with a toolbox so that we will have options when developers come to the town regarding large parcels of land. Because right now we don't have a multi-family development, a multi-unit bylaw in place. It's 40B or single family homes. So, the goal is to have a toolbox, and we're vetting different kinds of options that are potentially available to us and how those relate to affordable housing, because that is a Massachusetts mandate to have 10% of our housing deemed affordable. So, I'm really pleased with how that is moving along. We also took something off of Mike's plate, and Melissa volunteered to be the point person, which we think makes a whole lot of sense for this project, because there's certain aspects of the work that's going to come out of this housing task force plan that belong also in the master plan. So Melissa can ensure that we're getting some of those things as well, so that we don't pay for it again in the master plan. So I'm pleased with how that's moving along. Mike, do you have anything to add there?
No, I think you hit it all. I think it's moving along very well, and
Right.
I think the public process will be really great.
Yeah, so we're really looking forward to that. I did attend the planning board meeting again. Those are running like clockwork. They're getting through a lot of site plan reviews very quickly. One troubling item did come up. There was a site plan review and where an applicant actually came back because after completing a project, they had an additional use for the second floor of this garage structure. So their many citizens attended this meeting, and one of the things that came up was whether or not applicants are truthful in their initial applications, and how the Board of Selectmen is going to make sure of this. And so the planning board is going to meet with legal counsel, but really it's not the role of the Board of Selectmen or the planning board to adjudicate the validity of an application. We assume and should assume that applications are made with full representation, and unless we find out after the fact that didn't happen, there's really nothing we should do, and it's really unfair to citizens to accuse them of maybe not being truthful. So we are going to meet, the planning board will meet with town council and figure out, exactly what can be done. Because, and I believe that 99.9% of all applications are truthfully and properly completed. And so I just think there's a lot of things that have happened in the past, and we really need to focus on the future and make sure that we have processes in place that if permits are violated, there's remedy, there's a road for remedy, but it's certainly not part of the application process.
Robin, I forget, is there an affidavit that someone signs when they make an application that says, to the best of my knowledge, this is truthful and as accurate as we can make
I
it?
don't know, and that's why we're going to have, we need, my assumption is when you fill out an application, that's what you're doing, right? So we need to talk to legal counsel about it.
Right. I mean, obviously, it's not our purview to how are we going to validate anything more than the planning board is going to? I mean, that's silly, but
right. And the planning board only has so much, it's very difficult. There's a framework that they have to follow. And, like for instance, you build a house and then you decide to put on an addition, you're entitled to make that decision. So if you have an unfinished attic and then you want to finish it, you're entitled to do that. So how can you say no? So I think we need to make sure that we understand legally what we can do, and then that applicants and neighbors understand what the planning board is actually able to do and not to do. I think in some cases it's more risky to deny something if you don't really have a basis for it.
Well, again, based on my layperson's knowledge, about all you can do is get them to sign an affidavit that this is accurate. And as you point out, they have the absolute right to change it.
Right. We all have the right to change our minds.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's interesting. You want me to quickly go? Are you all set?
Yeah, that's all I have.
So there's nothing more I can say about Anna's efforts on sustainability. So her efforts have already been before us tonight. So the Phoenix Committee, 3 to 5. We finally met. It's going again. We had a very positive meeting where the good work of the previous committee was shared with the new committee, and we have asked that Mike go out to some consultants to find out if our budget is still realistic from the 7,500 from the 2022 town meeting. We are working on questions to ask the consultant and other information that we're going to need to move forward. Kate Canny passed the torch by giving us some very, very practical try to avoids. And we're going to go through and we're going to study this and get her done. So that's it. And that's all I have. Just two meetings this.
Okay.
All I can say is bravo.
So the only thing I've really got to report on is the Pedestrian Safety Committee met again this week, and we're starting to make a structure that I think will enable us to evaluate the various options that we've got. And I think I've mentioned before that we're sort of prioritizing school safety in the first part of this, and then the second part is make more to try and come up with recommendations to the planning board on how we might modify the sidewalk policies, and that's going to be take a little bit more time. But we've also the two resident members of the committee have done a great job in coming up with a sort of a summary of the sorts of things that we're looking at. And I think that's a good basis for going forward. The discussion at the last meeting was very productive. Unfortunately, Kevin wasn't able to make it. He's on vacation. So we will sort of review this a little bit more before we start putting a lot of flesh onto it. The other thing that I should give you the heads up about is that there's quite a lot of discussion on changing traffic lighting, signage, and so on around the school. And we realize that there's certainly a sensitivity to not overdoing that, over-egging the pudding, as it were, because we do want to maintain that rural character. But at the same time, it's a little bit problematic at the moment. We do acknowledge that we need to do something to improve the safety around both schools. So when I say both schools, I mean Chickering and the middle school. And it's interesting on the middle school front, because the middle school and the high school are combined, we can probably do some more in creating a safer environment for entering and leaving the high school as well as the middle school, even though that would be a byproduct of our middle school goals. So anyway, I'll be able to give you some more substantive data on this as we go forward, but I'm very encouraged by the very cooperative atmosphere on the committee, and I'm really truly thankful for the work that John Nichols and now I'm spacing. Mike, you have to help me.
Now I'm going to blank too.
Anyway, both of these residential committee members are being very helpful and coming up with some very good insights into how we should approach this, and being very sort of pragmatic in their approach to things. So very happy about that.
Super.
Mike, did you have anything to add on that?
No, I think you hit it.
Is it Chris Campanelli?
Yes, it is.
That's right. Chris and John
Campanella, I think it is.
Campanella, yeah. And both of them have been very, very helpful.
Yeah, I found them, the one time I met them, they were very, very, very pragmatic.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's no axe to grind. It's more,
right.
You know,
they just want to do the
right thing to do.
Right. So, Mike, have you already given your report, or?
So mostly, the one thing that we haven't touched on, I know the board's aware, but just for the public's benefit, earlier this week, we submitted a town comment letter regarding a proposed 40B at 43 Strawberry Hill Street. So the letter was a compilation of feedback we received from the Conservation Commission, the Board of Health, the Planning Board, and the Open Space Committee. And it is available on the website. So if anybody's interested, you certainly can go and read it. We've included all the attachments there. But at the end of the day, you know, my summary of the letter is, you know, we acknowledge that there is a need for affordable housing in Dover. You know, we're certainly not opposed to appropriate located development of affordable housing, but this location is not the right location. And, you know, we really tried to highlight the environmental concerns, the water concerns, and then a lot of the open space issues in the land, the conservation land that it abuts. So, you know, again, in terms of expectation setting, you know, we are very clear that Mass Housing is interested in those sort of comments, but does not weigh them in their decision making in terms of determining if a project is eligible. That's mostly a financial decision, and I think we anticipate that it most likely will be deemed financially a viable project. So we do think it very well may be deemed eligible. But again, at this time, there's no application before the town. If it is deemed eligible by the state, the developer then has an option to apply for a comprehensive permit through our Board of Appeals. So we'll keep the board, we'll keep the public updated should that occur. the one question that's come up is, when do we find out what the state decides? And there is no timeline outlined. They don't have we had a certain number of days to comment, but they don't have a certain number of days to make their decision. So we don't know is the easy answer in case you do get those inquiries. But again, we'll continue to update the website and share any information we receive.
Good.
And now we are at the consent agenda. And very disappointing, there are no one-day liquor licenses, but we do have a very important item to approve in-person early voting for all 2026 elections. So I'm going to move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
Aye, Dave Haviland.
Aye, Cam Hudson.
Okay, I just for the record, this is the shortest consent agenda we've ever had. And I don't even think Mona's going to harass us to sign anything.
No, it seems not.
Right.
You're right. Nothing to sign.
You're going to miss us
I
next
will.
week, Mona. You're going to miss us. All right. And with that, I'm going to make a motion to adjourn our meeting.
Second.
Third.
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
Aye, Dave Haviland.
Cam Hudson. Aye as well.
And stay warm, everybody.
I know.
Yeah, it's getting cold.
Go Pats, but stay warm.
Oh, yes. Go Pats. We should have all had Patriot gear on tonight.
Great. Well, thanks everyone.
Okay.
Have a wonderful night.